Salman Rushdie's The Satanic Verses is a novel of profound and often painful complexity, a sprawling, phantasmagoric epic that uses the lens of magical realism to dissect the most urgent and volatile themes of the late 20th century: the trauma of migration, the construction of identity in a diasporic world, the violent clash between the sacred and the secular, and the very nature of revelation itself. To elaborate on the summary is to descend into the labyrinth of its intertwined narratives, each a facet of a central, agonizing question. What happens when old worlds collapse, new ones prove hostile, and the self is shattered in the fall? The Fall and the Metamorphosis, a mythology of migration. The novel's opening is a foundational myth for the age of mass migration. The explosion of Flight AI 420, a number echoing the Indian Penal Code, is not just a terrorist act, but a symbolic annihilation of the past. Jibril Farishta and Saladin Chamcha, hurtling towards the English Channel, are more than survivors. They are avatars of two opposing responses to colonialism and displacement. Jibril, whose name means Gabriel in Arabic, is the subcontinent's beloved god-man, an actor who played Hindu deities with such conviction he seemed to embody them. His crisis is a crisis of faith, not just religious, but faith in a coherent universe. Saladin Chamcha, whose very name is a servile pun, Salahuddin, reduced to a butler's chamcha, meaning spoon or sycophant, represents the colonial subject who has internalized the master's gaze. He has meticulously crafted himself into the perfect English gentleman, despising his Bombay origins and his father's Indianness. Their physical transformations upon falling are thus perfect psychic externalizations. Jibril's halo is not a benign glow, but a sickening, oppressive radiance that prevents sleep and imposes a monstrous sense of destiny. It is the burden of presumed authenticity, the weight of a heritage he can no longer believe in but cannot escape. Saladin's transformation into a horned, hoofed, foul-smelling devil is the brutal literalism of racist fantasy. As one police officer remarks upon arresting him, "They describe you, they have the power of description, and we succumb to the pictures they construct." His demonization is the ultimate reduction of the immigrant to a beastly other. His subsequent refuge in the basement of the Chandar Café, a netherworld of marginalized, shape-shifted migrants, is one of the novel's most powerful critiques of Thatcher's Britain. This community of hidden selves accepts his form, teaching him that his monstrosity is a political condition, not a moral one. His path back to humanity is a path of political awakening and the painful reclamation of a denied self, culminating in a return to Bombay and a fraught reconciliation with his father on his deathbed. The dream narratives, probing the wounds of faith. Jibril's visionary dream sequences form the novel's controversial theological core. These are not straightforward allegories, but troubled, ambiguous explorations, filtered through the disintegrating mind of a film star accustomed to playing divine scripts. They treat sacred history as human history, fraught with contingency, politics, and moral ambiguity. Jahiliyyah and the Birth of a Faith. The Jahiliyyah sequences are a tour de force of historical imagination. Mahund, Rushdie's use of the derogatory medieval name, is a deliberate provocation, reclaiming it for complex characterization, is portrayed not as a saintly icon, but a formidable, weary, and pragmatic leader. He is a businessman prophet, negotiating with the power structure of the city, represented by the grandee Khalid and the merchant Hind. The central, explosive episode of the Satanic Verses is rendered with profound psychological and political nuance. The tempter is not a cartoon devil, but the elegant poet and satirist Baal, and the temptation itself to acknowledge the three goddesses, Allat, Manat, and Al-Uzza, as intermediaries, is presented as a moment of profound human weakness and political calculation. When Mahund later repudiates the verses as Satan's deception, the novel focuses on the cost of this purity.
The prostitute community of the Curtain, who took the names of the prophet's wives, are executed for blasphemy. Baal, the voice of doubt, poetry, and sensual life, is hunted down and killed. The narrative asks, does absolute faith require the suppression of ambiguity, of the feminine, of art? Is revelation an absolute transcendent dictation? Or is it inextricably intertwined with the historical, linguistic, and psychological realities of the receiver? The Imam in Exile. This sequence is a savage, pointed satire of revolutionary theocracy. The Imam, a clear analog to Ayatollah Khomeini, is a chilling portrait of absolutism. Exiled in a London flat, he is a figure of pure negation, living in a room kept artificially dark, surrounded by tape recordings of his sermons and a hatred for the land of slaves that hosts him. His faith is not life-affirming, but death-obsessed, a frigid ideology of power waiting for its moment to strike. This section directly connects the political theology of the dreams to the contemporary world, showing how dogma can be weaponized into a force of terrifying, impersonal vengeance. Aisha's pilgrimage. Rooted in a real event, the narrative of the village of Titlipur and the butterfly-clad visionary Aisha is Rushdie's most haunting exploration of the power and peril of faith. Aisha, guided by the angel Jibril in the form of a cloud of butterflies, leads the impoverished villagers on a pilgrimage to Mecca, promising the sea will part. The narrative masterfully sustains an unbearable ambiguity. From the perspective of the rationalist doctor, Mishal's husband, it is a tragic procession towards mass suicide, a horrifying example of fanaticism exploiting desperation. From the perspective of the believers, particularly Aisha and the devoted Mirza Said, it is an unwavering march towards a miracle. The climax, as the pilgrims walk into the Arabian Sea, refuses resolution. Do they drown, or are they transfigured? The novel offers both possibilities simultaneously, forcing the reader to dwell in the impossible space between empirical fact and transcendent belief. Convergence and tragedy, the angel's descent and the devil's redemption. The novel's final movement is a relentless, tragic convergence. Jibril, now completely consumed by his psychosis, becomes a literal deus ex machina, a vengeful god in the machine of the narrative. Believing himself the instrument of divine justice, he orchestrates the hot wax disaster, a fire at a restaurant that kills his romantic rival. His madness mirrors the tyrannical certainty of the Imam and the absolutism of Mahum's later years. In Bombay, his persecution complex fixes on Saladin, leading him to murder Saladin's lover, the actress Zini Vakil, a character herself representing a vibrant, syncretic, intellectual India opposed to all forms of fundamentalism. The final confrontation is rich in irony. Jibril, the angel, has become a monstrous agent of death. Saladin, the reformed devil, having reclaimed his identity and capacity for love, is now the vulnerable human. When Saladin concludes in a final act of self-defense to pick up Jibril's gun and cause the angel's suicide, the archetypes are definitively overturned. The devil does not destroy the angel. The human, in all his flawed, integrated complexity, ends the tyranny of the absolute. Saladin survives, carrying the wounds and wisdom of his journey. The unforgiving truth of the novel. To stay true to the Satanic verses is to acknowledge that it is not a treatise against faith, but a monumental novel about faith, its power, its solace, its perversions, and its constant tense dialogue with doubt. It is a fierce defense of the migrant's right to be hybrid, to carry multiple worlds within, and to challenge the absolute descriptions imposed by empires or orthodoxies. It champions the protean storytelling self against the fixed monolithic identity. Its methods are those of carnivalesque excess, satire, and sacred parody, tools used for centuries to question power. The novel's unforgiving truth lies in its insistence that stories, whether national, religious, or personal, are constructs, and that interrogating them is not blasphemy, but a vital human necessity. It suggests that the true sin may not be doubt, but the lethal certainty that seeks to silence all other voices. In the end, the Satanic verses stands as a monumental, dangerous, and essential testament to the artist's role in confronting the idols of the age, be they of gold, dogma, or racial prejudice, and in doing so, affirming the messy, contradictory, and ultimately irreducible complexity of human life.